Hey guys, today we are going to be doing a Baby Ackie Monitor care guide video. There are some notable differences that I thought it would be worth making a baby care guide for them. I do have a regular care guide. I actually have two. The second one's more up to date. That will be in the top right hand corner right about now, so you can check that out if you want. I will be covering all the topics I cover in that care guide in reference to babies. But I probably won't be going as in-depth because, that care guide's already there, and if you want more of an explanation, you can go to that video. But you should be able to get enough from this care guide video that you understand everything and know what to do to take care of a Baby Ackie monitor. So this should be all self-inclusive, but if you want more of a background, I recommend checking out my just regular Ackie monitor care guide video. But yeah, I've been having my babies for about a month now. Since they hatched, and they'll be going to home soon, but before they do, I thought I'd use them, to get a little video out there for how to take care of a Baby Ackie monitor. So we'll talk about them. A lot of stuff is pretty similar to adults, but there are some major differences. So let's get to it. Before that, make sure you check the lower right-hand corner. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you're notified with the latest updates on the channel. Alright guys, let's get to it. First topic we're going to talk about is enclosure. Right now, I have the 6 Ackie babies I have in a 4x2 by 3 foot enclosure. That is fine for a baby. You're going to want bigger for an adult. My adult enclosures, which are over here, and you'll see more of them in the regular Ackie care guide I have if you watch that, are roughly 6 feet by 2.5 feet by 4 feet. And that's probably what you would want for an adult. I think even these could be a little on the low end in terms of space. Ackies are very active, so, they use a lot of space, even though they are a dwarf monitor. But anyway, to start out, if you want to put them in a 4x2x2 or something around that, that would be totally fine, but I would upgrade definitely by, 7 months or something. I'm definitely against keeping them in a 4x2x2 their whole life. I made a video on that recently, and I'll throw that in the top right corner. But I could definitely say that as a baby, that's probably fine as they're growing up. I don't think that's that big of a deal, but definitely you need to upgrade. So you could put them in adult enclosure right away, that's fine. But if you want to put them in like a 4x2x2 in the beginning, that's fine as well. But yeah, I just do my own enclosures. You can also buy them, but these are a little bit cheaper to make. If you're going to be moving a lot, I definitely recommend maybe, unless you're really handy, which I'm not, to get a commercial one, but these are cheaper if you're not going to be moving around a lot. Easy to make. I don't have detailed plans for this one specifically, but it's really just a short version of my adult enclosures, which I do have detailed building plans for, and I'll plug them in the description below. So if you want to build them, it's probably about $500 for one of these if you use the same materials, but it's definitely a lot cheaper than going commercial. So, check the description if you want that information. One thing that will probably not change at all is the substrate mix you put them on. I have all my guys, whether baby or an adult, on the same substrate mix. I do about 2/3 organic soil and about 1/3 play sand. I just get the stuff at Lowe's. If you're in the US, you can get something cheap like Scott's Organic Soil with sphagnum moss, and then just the play sand they have at Lowe's or something. That's what I usually go with. But any organic soil or play sand should be fine. I just do a mix of that. I have been told by some vets that you might want to watch the sand or the play sand as their babies, because sometimes the fine grains can irritate their tummies. But I think overall Ackies should be fine on the sand, especially since it's not primarily sand. It's just kind of is mixed in with primarily dirt. So I just want to throw that word of caution in there because I have heard some vets say that. But this is what I put them on, and they've been fine. I haven't had any issues, and like I said, my adults are on the same similar mix of soil and the play sand. In terms of depth, though, that's probably the one thing that would change if you're not moving them right into an adult enclosure. If you're moving them right into their adult enclosures, you probably can just give them a larger depth. But if you're doing a baby enclosure first, then you probably only need about 10 inches to a foot, I would recommend for them. My adults are in about 2 feet of vertical space for their substrate. I think that is a little too much. You don't really need to go that far. I'd probably only do 1.5 feet if I was to redo it again. A female will go down pretty far though, like my plump female here when they're laying eggs, and even if they're not mating, they can still lay infertile eggs. So as adults, you probably want to give them 1.5 feet. I have seen her go down about 20 inches when she laid this clutch I have here. But enough about adults. The babies, you should be fine with about 10 inches. But definitely as they get older, you want to upgrade the depth you have for them. But pretty standard, pretty much the same between adult and baby. One thing I don't have in my baby enclosure currently that you should have is climbing wood. I have a bunch of wood in my adult enclosures, as you've seen. But you will want some for your babies when you put them in there. They love to climb. Ackies in general just love to climb. I just kind of been keeping an eye on these guys, and they'll be going to new owners very soon. So I don't really have the necessity to put them in, as I'm just keeping an eye on them and making sure they're healthy. But they can definitely utilize climbing wood, and I definitely will get some in here eventually, probably for the next clutch. But you will want something similar to my adult enclosures where they could climb and do some vertical activities. So that's really important to, you know, giving them a fulfilling life and stuff like that, and some enrichment. So make sure you have some climbing wood. I have a video on gathering wood from the outdoors, which you can use in your enclosures instead of making a sort of a hefty purchase of wood, which is very expensive in the hobby, to be honest. So I'll plug in that video as well on the top right. As for water and food bowls, I do not have a food bowl. I throw in their food and they hunt them down. They are very avid hunters. They enjoy that a lot. They love crickets, anything that gives them sort of a chase. So I do not offer a food bowl. I did offer food bowls in the past, but I did remove them because I found it more enriching to not include them. Now, I do have water bowls, both for my adults and babies. But they don't really use it that much. I do see them drink. They will drink out of them, so it is important to offer them. They don't need to be too elaborate, but they do get primarily most of their water through their food. So while it's not super important, it is still important to include. But you don't really need to do anything crazy. They don't really swim or anything like that. So a nice shallow bowl should be fine. They do get it dirty a lot. So in my adult enclosures, I'll show you real quick. I do have a bigger one. Although they usually probably don't need something this big, I kind of like how high it sort of is. So they're a little, you know, harder to get dirty, but they still find a way. So that's my only word of warning there. You might have to clean it out a lot. But that's what you should probably be doing for food and water bowls. To quickly talk about their basking spot, I am very simplistic in my baby enclosure right now just because I don't have a lot of stuff in there and I've been keeping an eye on them. But you're going to want a variety of different levels to form sort of a gradient. So that way they can kind of pick and choose the temperature they like at different levels and really have their choice of how hot they want it. I do have a little bit of that going on with that hide there. They can go on top and kind of get a different sort of range of temperatures there than if they were to go on the substrate. Also, having multiple sort of bulbs does help widen that gradient and offer more diversity in the temperature, so you might want to consider that as well. To give more of an illustration of what I mean by offering some sort of a gradient and different levels, my adult enclosure here has a bunch of different levels that he can go to. He can go on that wood piece right there. He can go on that log in the back. He can go there. He can go on that little formation right there, that, I don't know, that structure. I don't know what you want to call it. He has a lot of different areas. There's also some things you can build that will contribute to sort of this science, if you want to call it that, or sort of this gradient that you can make, and it's really well defined, and I'll probably do one eventually myself. So you can look into that also. But you will want to offer sort of a wide range of different space and, I guess, vertical space where they can kind of sit and relax and absorb those basking temperatures. So that's probably what you'll want to do for their basking spot, and we'll get into the temperatures later on in the video. For a specific baby enclosure, something like a 4x2x2, and not their full adult enclosure, you'll probably want to offer a range of 2 hides. One on the high end like this, and high end I mean temperature-wise, and another one on the low end. They also love to actually go under water bowls and stuff like that because it's very moist and that helps with sheds. So allowing them to do that is a good idea. You can actually, I don't know if you can see them, there's a little Ackie baby head right there peeking out. When this wants to refocus, oh, he just went away from under the water bowl. They love that stuff. Leave them be, let them do that. It's actually really good for them if they're working on sheds and stuff or want cooler temperatures. So that works as well, but I'd offer 2 official hides in a baby enclosure. When they get kind of bigger into adult enclosure, you'll want to expand on that and offer a wide range of hides. But that can be mostly utilized by including different woods and stuff like that. So, you know, right now you probably just want at least 2 hides, one on the higher end temperature-wise and one on the lower end. Now, I don't have this currently going on in the baby enclosure, but definitely consider going bioactive. It makes cleaning so much easier. What you really want to do is get some bioactive bugs. In my adult enclosures, I have it fully bioactive. Well, not fully bioactive. I don't have plants in there yet, which is sort of difficult for Ackies. As babies, not so much, but as they get older, they like to dig and rip stuff up. So you want to consider that if you're getting plants, but I have it nearly bioactive. I have a bunch of bioactive bugs in there. Dwarf white isopods work really well in the temperatures and sort of the humidity in the substrate. Springtails work somewhat, but not as well. So I would consider getting dwarf whites or something like that. But those will decompose sort of their waste and cycle the soil, and you can get some plants in there to soak up those nutrients, which is really good for an enclosure. So I'll be adding in some plants in mine soon, but I would definitely recommend looking at bioactive for your enclosures. I wanted to add that in here. Now on to an important topic, temperatures. And this is one of the main real differences between an adult and baby Ackie. Adult Ackies will want something within the 140 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit range usually. The highest mine will go for the adults is probably 155, but there are 160s sometimes with a new bulb. But babies, they prefer something within the 120 to 130 range. You can go a little higher and give that option. Sometimes this will get a little hotter than 130, whether their basking spot is. Oh, and we got a pooping. We got one pooping. Let's not focus on that one. How about we look at that one right there? Oh, we can still see him. Anyway, I do give options for going a little higher than 130 in this enclosure sometimes, and that's fine depending on the time of day and a new bulb and stuff. Like I said, kind of about the adults, but really, you want to make sure the option of something within 120 to 130 is there. You want to give them that ability since they really do prefer that range. Sometimes they will go a little higher, which is, like I said, why I offer going a little higher than 130 in some areas. But they will prefer probably the 120 to 130 range. So as long as there's temperatures in the 120s they can go to and relax around, that's probably fine if you go a little over in some spots. But 120 to 130 is probably what you'll want to aim for in terms of temperatures for babies. Like I said, when they get to adults, you're going to want to increase that probably by like an average of 20 degrees. But as babies, they like it a little cooler. Now, for a low-end temperature, which I like to just give because it's kind of important, you want to allow them to get to temperatures probably low 70s to mid 70s. Mid 70s is probably preferable, but low 70s would be fine. And this is sort of an argument for why a longer enclosure is more important because it allows for a more diverse gradient of temperatures. It's harder to get a 4-foot length enclosure down to mid 70s or so. On the opposite side of the basking lights. So, you want to keep the low end at that temperature. As babies, it should be fine because they're not as big and they don't cover as much territory. But as adults, you want something a little bigger so they can kind of have more of a gradient. But anyway, that's what you'll want to aim for in terms of a low end temperature. About mid 70s is good. As an added note to that, I do want to mention they can tolerate lower temperatures. Sometimes the room I'm in, or the reptile room, it does drop below 70 in the winter time. And it's not always below 70 in their enclosure, but sometimes when it is that low in the reptile room, their low end temperature will get into the 60s, and they can tolerate that fine. Usually a lot of the soil or some of the soil will retain some of that heat, and when they burrow, they should be able to get to that spot and find something doable. But getting below 70 isn't going to be the end of the world for them. Obviously, you don't want to aim for that to happen a lot, But if there are some really cool cold nights for them, if it gets into the 60s, it should be fine for a night or two. So don't worry if that happens. I know sometimes room temperature is hard to control, especially in older homes. So that should be fine, but don't try to make it something that happens all the time. Now let's talk about bulbs. Right now, I only have one bulb on during the day. I do like to try to get in 2 bulbs because it really widens the basking area. But right now, I only have one, and that's a 60 watt. This is really going to depend on your reptile room, though. I've ranged from using like a 38 watt to an 80 watt in my adults, purely based on seasons and stuff like that. Whatever you have to do to achieve the temperature that it'll be basking at, that's what you want to go with. And it doesn't hurt to have a wide range of bulbs. Now, these are halogen floodlights. You could get these at a lot of hardware stores and stuff like that. I get this at Lowe's, like I do a lot of my products. But that's what you should usually get for them. You don't want to get a spotlight. Those are very narrow and can burn them. So make sure you get a floodlight if you do this. And try to incorporate 2 bulbs. This one over here is a 38 watt. I try to put this on at night if it gets cool in the reptile room. But I might try to substitute this one out for a 38 watt and have both on at the same time. Whatever really works is what you want to go with. But these are pretty cheap. They're not expensive. You can get a lot of them. So I would definitely go with these. The fixtures, I get a lot of questions about the fixtures in my DIY enclosures. I'll plug them down below, the link to purchase them. So if you're curious what they are, they'll be in the description. On to UVB. I currently do not have UVB in the baby enclosure. That's to be added. But my adult enclosures, I have a wide range of UVB. I use Arcadia. They are a great company, and I recommend them definitely for UVB. In my adult ones, the front one here is the 6% D3 T5 bulb from Arcadia, and the back one is the 14% T5 bulb from Arcadia. So that's what I have in my adult enclosures. You want them roughly 2/3 the length of your enclosure. So if I was to add one to the baby enclosure, I'd probably get the 2-foot one and put it along right here, which I will be doing eventually, like I said. But right now I'm offering D3 to supplement that. But you definitely need UVB. Do not rely on D3 to supplement that. It's definitely important to include. So definitely get it in there. UVB is very important. Off of that, I do want to say that I did reach out to Arcadia on Facebook a while back to see what I would put in here, and they recommended putting in the 12% D3 T5 bulb. So that's probably what I'll be putting in here if you're curious what to put in, like a baby enclosure, what would do well. So I would put that in here, get the 2-foot length one. It's a little under 2/3 the length, but it should do fine. And then you don't want them to get within 12 to 15 inches, they recommend. And I think that's pretty standard on all their bulbs on my adult enclosures. I think the closest they could get is like about, I don't know, 17 inches, something like that. But these are a little bit more powerful. But for this one, if you're looking at like a 4x2x2 or something typical of a baby, don't get within 12 to 15 inches, or don't let them get within that. And 12% T5 bulb D3 would be great from Arcadia. And probably get the 24-inch one. Talking about humidity, a lot of people think that Ackies are high humidity sort of reptiles, and they're really not. They enjoy high humidity in the substrate, but the air humidity really doesn't need to be anything above 60%, even 50%. They do live in a pretty dry area, and they do experience most of their humidity and moisture through the substrate. So what you want to do is really concern yourself with making sure the substrate is wet at some point in its depth. You know, it might not be on the first couple inches, but somewhat, somewhere down, it should be sort of moist. And that's why it's kind of nice to let them go under the water bowl, because it does keep it pretty moist in that area. So you don't have to concern yourself too much with humidity in the air. It's fine if it's dry. I usually will take about a gallon of water and put it in that little watering can down there, and just water it down maybe once a week or so, maybe even longer, and just moisten the substrate. So that's usually what I do. But don't get too wild about humidity. It's really overhyped in the hobby, and I do have a video on that as well, which I will include in the upper right-hand corner. As you've been seeing throughout the video, their diet mostly consists of crickets right now that have been gut loaded. Gut loading is very important to make sure the crickets are feeding on the right nutrients for the Ackie, so make sure you understand that process. I usually gut load them for about 2 or 3 days. I'm not going to really say any more on gut loading, but I do put in crickets. I do have roaches in there, small dubia roaches. But crickets work really well for babies because they really like sort of that entertainment factor, the fact that they're quick and they jump, and that's really entertaining to them and really gets them motivated to eat. So, you might want to get them trained on dubia roaches at some point because dubia roaches are a good part of the diet. They're very nutritious and such, and definitely a diverse, sort of insect or invertebrate to keep in their diet. But initially, I would put them on crickets or something that is very active and very fast moving. They really like that. So make sure you do something like that. You gut load them, you add your supplements and such. We'll talk more on supplements in a minute, but make sure you understand what gut loading is as well. But that's their diet right now, mostly crickets. And we'll talk about their feeding schedule in a second. Another main difference from baby to adult is their feeding schedule. They get fed every day. They are, growing very fast. They've grown so much in the first month that they've hatched. So that's really important that you offer them food daily. My adults get fed 3 times a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, pretty much. So they don't get fed pretty much nearly as much as these guys. So you want to make sure you understand that these guys need to be fed daily. And they are growing and they really can use that sort of food and energy and such to really get their bodies up to adult size. So make sure you understand that. Every day you should be feeding them. So that's really important. As for supplements, right now I am using calcium with D3 because I do not have UVB in there. But when you get UVB in there, and you should have UVB in there, you'll just use calcium without D3. I just dust every meal, sort of with this calcium, and that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple. I do not offer a multivitamin or anything. If you gut load your feeder items or whatever correctly, you shouldn't need any multivitamins. So this is what I do pretty much every meal. Pretty simple, pretty standard. Now, a quick note on cohabitation. As they're babies and before they reach sexual maturity, having more than one in the same enclosure should be fine, given adequate space and enough food for them to eat. You got to take that into account, but they should be fine up until around sexual maturity. But I do not really condone cohabiting Ackies. I just don't see it as beneficial to them, even if it works out. It really stresses them out anyway. It makes them nervous and such like that. And really, you're just asking once sexual maturity comes up at about like 7-8 months for them to start fighting for territory and stuff, and something bad happening. So I recommend not going past 6 months, maybe even like 5 months of cohabiting them. I don't think it's beneficial for them, even if it doesn't get deadly. But before that, you should be fine. They're already sort of displaying dominance behavior sometimes, so it does start pretty young, but nothing deadly should happen while they're probably younger than 6 months. So that's my advice on that. Now to finish up, just a word on, daylight cycles. I do about 14 hours in the summer months and about 12 hours in the winter months, just to sort of mock what they would experience anyway. But I don't think it's super important that it needs to be changed from sort of those warmer to cooler months. I would give them probably at least 12 hours of light a day and 12 hours of heat a day, and maybe increase that in the summer like I do. But that's what I do for my Ackies. I thought I'd just throw it in there. But yeah, you can go with that as you will. So that about wraps this video up, guys. I just thought it would be nice to do a baby Ackie Monitor care guide, as there are some key differences. Make sure to check that lower right-hand corner and subscribe if you enjoyed. I hope this was helpful, and feel free to give some feedback if you want to in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys, and I appreciate it. See yas.